Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name is Gavin, and today I've got my next installment of the rest of season wide receiver series for 2021 fantasy football. This video is a week past due. I was hoping to get this out to you all last week. However, right now I've got some crazy busy stuff in my schedule with finals and college and all that, so it's been a transition here as I'm moving into the end of this semester. So bear with me here, be patient. I'm trying to get out as much extra content as I can for you all. However, right now my schedule is fairly crammed. But today we're finally getting this episode out. I've updated the rankings, updated the list, and included some details and information that we learned in the past week to, again, readdress these rankings. The hope is that tomorrow you all will see my running back segment of this series, which is all prepped and ready to go. I just have to sit down and film that video for you all so I can get that out and sent your way on Saturday morning. So again, thank you guys for your patience. It's been a busy couple of weeks for me and will continue to be leading up until Christmas, where I can kick back and relax for 3-4 weeks until I start my spring semester. So thank you guys so much. Let's hit the intro and let's get started. All right, here we go. So no surprise here. Cooper Kupp, once again, our rest of season wide receiver one here. Nobody is on par with Cooper Kupp right now in terms of the levels of output he's had. He is leading the NFL in receiving yards by, I believe it's dang near 300 yards at this point. He's averaging 20.8 fantasy points per game in half PPR scoring. That's an astronomical number to be at. And he has 9 or more targets in every game. He's nursing a toe injury right now that Sean McVay alerted us of on Wednesday afternoon. However, I'm not going to be too worried about that until that potentially means he misses game time, which I hope and do not expect to be the case. So Cooper Kupp, there's no real strong argument against him at this number one position. If you ask me at this current point in time, he has been miles above the rest of the competition all season long. Davante Adams at the number 2 spot. He's got me a little bit worried right now. Coming off of a bye week, an extra week of rest, Adams has landed on the injury report for a hamstring issue. This is not the ideal thing that we want to be hearing about Davante, again, coming off a week of rest. On a personal level, I just went out and made a massive deal to acquire Davante Adams in my Dynasty League, in which myself and Eric, who does the channel here with me, and he is the guy that makes the thumbnails and stuff, he'll come on and do some fantasy content and analysis every once in a while. Myself and Eric are the number 1 and 2 seeds in this particular 12-team Dynasty League. Eric has Cooper Kupp on his team, so I had to go out and make a push to, in my eyes, acquire an equalizer because I'm trying to make a push. I recognize my team's window is right now. I go out and acquire Davante Adams, and the last thing I want him to do is miss games. But it's probably me just being overly worried here about this issue. Hamstrings can nag players, and they can be very, very difficult to overcome. Look to DeAndre Hopkins earlier on this season. However, we've still got a couple days before game time. Hopefully, he can get off the injury designation. But Davante, I would say between him and the next 2 names on this list, they're all in contention for this number 2 spot, and they can very easily be interchanged with one another. I think Davante, though, he's got 5 100-yard games on the season. The one thing that's really held him back from being in that elite 1/8 here that he was at the top of the mountain last season is that he only has 5 receiving touchdowns this year. This is a major drawback from the numbers we've seen him have in basically every season dating back to 2016. I think that overall, the Packers are just spraying the ball out a little bit more than they have in years past, in the red zone in particular. And Davante missing some time, Aaron missing some time. There's been a couple culminations of various circumstances that I think have led up to this. But Davante Adams, I'm still very confident that if he's healthy, he's a top 3 receiver every week, regardless of matchup. Him and Aaron Rodgers seem to find a way to get the job done week in and week out. Justin Jefferson here, one of my favorite names to talk about in terms of not only Dynasty content. Now, this is a redraft episode, but we got off in a little bit of a Dynasty tangent there with Davante Adams because of my personal trade. But, man, Justin Jefferson, if you want to be holding a receiver for the next 5, 6, 7 years, this guy's ceiling is astronomical. He does literally everything you want a star fantasy wide receiver to do. He wins at all 3 levels of the defense. He's virtually unguardable, and he has so much upside. I mean, his route running is fantastic, and he's doing all of this in his second year. The numbers that we're seeing from him at this early stage in his NFL career, the veteran poise and production we're already getting from him at this young age is fantastic to see. He's got 14.5 or more fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 outings. And again, he's already one of the best wide receiver talents in the league, and we're just finishing up year 2 now. Kirk Cousins, he's got trust in him. He's been producing these fantastic numbers even with Adam Thielen on the field. Now that Adam Thielen's been off the field with his ankle sprain, we'll see how much longer that continues to impact him here. But I just see the sky being the limit for Justin Jefferson here, and there's a whole lot of upside in that fantasy situation. Tyreek Hill at the number 4 spot. The reason I move him a peg down below Justin Jefferson is simply the consistency and the streakiness of this Kansas City offense, which some could argue is partially a fault of Tyreek Hill's. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, I will say, 0 touchdown passes in his last 2 games post that 5 touchdown performance he had against the Raiders, who is the matchup for the Chiefs this week. However, the other side of the argument, where those who might place the blame on Patrick Mahomes for those lackluster performances, no touchdowns again in the last 2 games, is that Tyreek Hill has had some really costly drops that have resulted in Mahomes interceptions and are just simply, and quite frank, missed opportunities. So whatever way you look at it, there is something not clicking at the top level of efficiency that it could be from Tyreek Hill. I will not discredit his ceiling. Tyreek Hill can go out there and win your individual matchup for you just like that. And he can have a point output that is unmatched by any other player. Tyreek is a fantastic talent. He's a fantastic option to have at the wide receiver position. And the only reason, again, that I might not love him on a week-to-week basis is that floor and the potential that he could have a bust-worthy performance. All right, I just had to make a cut in today's episode. Somebody's car was, the alarm was going off outside my apartment. I didn't want that to interfere with today's episode, and of course, I wanted to make sure that wasn't my car out there doing that. So here we go, Stefon Diggs at the number 5 position here. Stefon, if you throw out this week's contest against the Buffalo Bills in that awful wind and the crazy weather conditions, he has 6 straight games leading up to that matchup with 11 or more points in half PPR scoring. His consistency in the middle chunk of this season has been very, very impressive, and obviously the upside with himself and Josh Allen on a weekly basis speaks for itself. I believe in Diggs the rest of the way this season. He's got a juicy matchup against a struggling Tampa Bay secondary this week. I love Diggs the rest of the season. I think he has the potential to potentially, really redundant there, has the opportunity, I almost said it a 5th time, wow, he has the opportunity to, man, I really want to say that word, don't I? Stefon Diggs has the chance to outperform this position of my number 5 assessment of him. I really like the way that his upside could trend the rest of the year. Diontae Johnson at the number 6 spot. I wish I would have just made this move sooner. I have loved Diontae Johnson all season long, and I'm finally giving him the push up the rankings that I feel he deserves. You get everything with Diontae, from consistency to the occasional boom performance. He is so reliable, and they need him in this Pittsburgh offense, whether it's underneath routes, short combinations. He can stretch the field. Again, he can do it all. The drops have declined as well since the 2020 season. It's been a fantastic year for Diontae. I've been really excited to see this. He plays not exactly the Antonio Brown role, but about as close of that role that the Steelers have had in that time since they've had AB on this roster. So he is a very valuable piece to the Steelers lineup and our fantasy lineups. Diontae Johnson is absolutely somebody I want on my team the rest of the year. Deebo Samuel now, I will say, would be higher than Diontae Johnson if it was 100% certain that he was in the lineup and was 100% healthy for this week. His upside is far higher than Diontae Johnson. He is far more explosive than Diontae Johnson, and he's a fantastic player who plays a very dynamic role in this 49ers offense. He's basically a running back wide receiver hybrid at this point. I never thought I'd be saying that. Deebo Samuel, his rookie season, was notorious for end arounds and wide receiver reverses and making big plays in the wide receiver run game, if you will. This season, Kyle Shanahan has taken that level and put it on steroids, and he just lines him up in the backfield, hands him the ball, and he averages 10-plus yards per carry in some contests. In particular, I remember he had a 6 for 66 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns in one of his most recent games. So Deebo Samuel is a freak of nature. He's a physical big guy as well, so you add that on top of his explosiveness. He's an absolute bear to tackle for those smaller defensive backs in the secondary. Deebo at number 7 should be higher if his groin were healthy. Chris Godwin coming fresh off of that franchise record-breaking performance, 15 receptions for Chris Godwin against the Atlanta Falcons. Look, Tampa Bay wide receivers for me right now, not named Antonio Brown, are trending up because of that suspension. We know at this point in the season, when no AB, or when there is not the presence of AB on the field, Gronk, Godwin, Evans, they all put up better numbers because Antonio Brown demands such a high target share from Tom Brady. And these other assets on the offensive side of the ball are so elite that they are more than capable of putting up top-end numbers when they're out there. So you're telling me Antonio Brown's not going to be on the field till Week 17. I'll vault Chris Godwin up my rankings. He's a great big slot receiver. And I think this team is going for the MVP for Tom Brady. That means they're going to keep letting that football rip, throwing touchdowns in the red zone instead of rushing them. I love all the opportunities. Same situation here with Mike Evans at number 9. The reason I have him a bit lower is I think Godwin's floor is higher. You give him more receptions, more underneath looks. That's going to, again, boost that floor value up, give you more freebies in PPR. Evans is the touchdown guy, though. We are seeing a lot of TDs bounce Rob Gronkowski's direction. That does limit his overall upside in my eyes. However, again, no AB. It's a fantastic situation for him. Ceedee Lamb for the Dallas Cowboys. An interesting development here is the injuries and the lack of health in the running back department for the Dallas offense. This could potentially mean more opportunities for Dak Prescott to throw the ball to these playmakers and have things open up downfield. We all know Zeke has been having some difficulties with some irritation in his knee throughout the season. He hasn't really quite been 100% for a while this year. And it turns out that Tony Pollard is also nursing some injuries here that could potentially limit him or make him a game-time decision for this week's matchup against the Washington football team. So if that is the case, Ceedee Lamb's a heck of a good option to go with the football as well. We all know who Ceedee Lamb is as a talent. We all know his explosiveness, his upside. And the schedule the rest of the year, I think, is very nice. Washington twice, you can exploit that back end. The Giants, Arizona, that could be a high-scoring game. And then the Philadelphia Eagles to cap things off. I really like Ceedee Lamb. I love the talent. As long as Dak Prescott is playing at his best, Ceedee Lamb has the opportunity to have a very high ceiling. Keenan Allen here at number 11, coming off of another good performance, 2 touchdown receptions for Allen last week. However, he's landed on the COVID reserve list, so that's going to impact his potential availability for us this week. Not the greatest news, not what you want to hear, but he is uber consistent. He has 10 or more fantasy points in 10 out of his 12 games played this season. That's about as good as it gets from a floor perspective and reliability stance. DeAndre Hopkins at the number 12 spot here, so rounding out the wide receiver 1 group here for 12-team leagues. D-Hop returned last week, scored a touchdown, had a great toe tap catch in the end zone. However, the one knock on D-Hop this season has been the volume of targets headed his direction. He hasn't really been all that dependable in terms of just going out there and getting the job done without a touchdown. Now, while DeAndre Hopkins has been very touchdown dependent this year, he has also pretty much scored a touchdown almost every time we've asked him to. So the big red flag, and I'm going to put this in context here because I'm not going to go out here and make some absurd statement. He's only got 2 targets in each of his last 2 games. That is very concerning at face value. However, if we put the first game, which was against the Packers, the last time he played prior to that hamstring injury, the context with that is he was pulled out of the game very early because of that hamstring issue. And then obviously this past week was the other 2 target performance where they're slowly, pulling the ropes back in here and getting him integrated back into this offense. So D-Hop is going to see more than 2 targets going forward here this season. However, the big kicker is he has a big fat 0 in the department of double-digit target games when we look at some other receivers like Diontae Johnson's, Keenan Allen's, in particular with monster amount of games with 10 or more targets. D-Hop has a goose egg in that column. So we're not getting elite target volume for DeAndre Hopkins this season. The touchdowns are being incredibly needed in the fantasy scoring department. Let's hope he can continue to have that pace the rest of the season, and we'll see how things play out from here. Jamar Chase is now exited my wide receiver 1 tier of players for the rest of this season. Unfortunately, Jamar, the last 5-6 weeks has just not given me a stable enough floor to classify him in that category now that D-Hop's healthy, now that we've gotten some other names back and learned some more about the breakouts of various players. I'm not just feeling so great about the overall dependability of Ja'Marr Chase on a week-to-week basis. However, with that being said, I'm going to bet on Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase's connection. The ceiling here on a weekly basis is fantastic and something that could absolutely win you an individual matchup the rest of the way. Hopefully the case isn't that Ja'Marr Chase is playing the number one role for your fantasy lineup, because if that is, you're looking at some boom or bust potential, for any individual week. It almost seems that the matchup isn't so much of a question as it is just the fact that he needs to hit a home run ball over the top. He had that in his sights last week, juggles the ball, flips it backwards, and it's intercepted. His struggles have been well documented the last 5 or 6 games here. Let's hope he can turn things around down the stretch of the fantasy playoffs. Jaylen Waddle at the number 14 spot has actually outperformed Ja'Marr Chase. So for those of you who want to argue that maybe Jaylen Waddle should be higher on this list, I think that's a very valid argument. The reason I bump him lower here is we're getting one less game of utility, as Jaylen Waddle is on a bye week here in week 14. However, you look at the body of work for Jaylen Waddle the last 5 weeks, 8 or more targets in 7 of his last 8 games, and the breakout has really been over that last 5-game stretch, giving us multiple 20-point performances, seeing multiple games of 10 or more targets, which is, again, something DeAndre Hopkins, going back to that point, hasn't seen once this season. You're getting underneath targets. Tua is starting to force the ball to him downfield. Well, I shouldn't say force the ball because Jaylen Waddle is creating separation, but they're starting to get him involved down the field, which is something huge for Jalen's ceiling down the stretch. I really like how the Dolphins use him in this offense. We've even seen him produce in spite of the fact that Davante Parker returned to the lineup. A lot of positive signs for Jaylen Waddle's involvement down the stretch of this season. Hollywood Brown at number 15 here, another player who has taken a slight hit as it regards to the last time we made this episode. The one thing I like to see with the wide receivers videos is that the changes to the list are not nearly as extreme as you'll see they are in the running backs episode. I have never seen a position group evolve as fast or as comparable to that running back position group, because we've got injuries. We've got players who are no longer starting. We've got all sorts of different things that are jumbling up these rankings and having them change wildly every time. I like how in these wide receiver videos things are pretty constant. We've got guys who are moving up a few spots here and there, moving down, but overall players stay in the same range. I believe Hollywood was my wide receiver 12, I want to say, the last time I made this episode, but it was 3 weeks back. I'm not sure. If you really want to go reference that video and figure that out for me, let me know. But Hollywood at the number 15 spot here, his ceiling hasn't been exploited, or exploited is not the right word. He hasn't been able to capitalize and produce a ceiling-worthy fantasy performance. Over his last 4 games, he has not hit a home run ball in a while, and he does not have a touchdown in his last 4 performances. This is kind of boiling down to multiple factors. Lamar Jackson and this Ravens offense as a whole have been struggling. They've been turning the football over more, and they've been less efficient. Again, Hollywood has not hit one of those deep shot touchdowns in a good month as well. So you're looking at some factors that have added up to him not being able to take advantage of the ceiling that he has as a talent. That's something I hope can be changed and obviously taken advantage of down the stretch of the season, because he's a very talented player. The target share has been fantastic. The opportunities are there. We just got to start capitalizing and taking advantage of opportunities. DK Metcalf, another player who is underachieving in terms of the talent he possesses and what he's actually putting up in the fantasy scoring column. He's been held to 60 or fewer yards. 60 yards was his highest output. That happened last week. 60 or fewer yards in his last 4 contests and no touchdowns across that streak of games. However, the one good omen we saw was that Russ started to look right for parts of the game against San Francisco last week. So whereas he was very, very bad dating back to that first return against Green Bay, he struggled. He's starting to look better. He's showing improvements. He's looking healthier. He has been able to produce very quality games for Tyler Lockett since his return, but DK Metcalf has been someone who has struggled, and again, being held out of the end zone is a big deal for someone who doesn't traditionally see a high volume of targets sent his way. He is an explosive big playmaker that capitalizes on efficiency. That's not something we've seen DK be able to obviously have in his fantasy scoring outlook the last few weeks, or even adding up to an entire month-long period of time. Michael Pittman at number 17 here. Look, the touchdown production has cooled off. That has impacted his overall output. However, I still like the situation with him being tied to Carson Wentz. This is a quarterback that will throw the ball up to his favorite target or someone that he trusts in this offense, and having a big framed wide receiver like a Michael Pittman is exactly what Wentz is looking for. He does have a week 14 bye. Maybe they can cinch up this passing game a little bit, but honestly right now Jonathan Taylor is the motor of this team, and that is something that's not going to change. They need to take advantage of play action passes and work Michael Pittman into the red zone game plan a little bit more. I think that is what can salvage him back into that fringe wide receiver one territory that we were talking about a month ago when Pittman was having this really nice breakout stretch of games here. Again, however, he has not really put up numbers that have been overly satisfying over that stretch of time. Hopefully he can get back on track to close out this season. T. Higgins is someone that's surging up the list. He is dealing with some injuries. We'll see if he's able to go this week. However, T. Higgins is coming off back-to-back games with 110 or more receiving yards. In 4 of his last 5 games as well, he has 10 or more fantasy points. So you're looking at a player who, again, is trending up right now. He has actually outproduced Ja'Marr Chase over that last month-long period of time. That is a little bit concerning for Ja'Marr Chase owners, and obviously very encouraging for T. Higgins owners. This is a really, really good player. I mean, T. Higgins is someone who, prior to this past year's draft, I actually was advocating for. I did draft coverage and content during last offseason, so obviously stick around this offseason for that content as well. I was an advocate for the Bengals drafting Penei Sewell, shoring up that offensive line, keeping Joe Burrow healthy, because I thought this team could move forward with T. Higgins as their number 1 pass catcher on the roster. He has a big frame, a big body. He can win the contested balls. He can run routes. He has very good field awareness and can make very, very impressive toe drag catches on the sideline. I think T. Higgins is the complete package, and he's been showing that when defenses are diluting so much attention to Ja'Marr Chase, and he's left in one-on-one coverage with the team's second best or third best defender, he is absolutely going to abuse them. And he has done that the past 4 out of 5 games. He's had some long touchdown receptions. He's had some very impressive plays he's made over that stretch of time. And if teams continue to not respect him in the deep passing game and in the red zone, he's going to continue to have these successful numbers. He's moved into very quality wide receiver 2 categories for 12-team leagues. I'm excited to see what T. Higgins can do the rest of the season because, again, I really like what he is as a player. Tyler Lockett here at the number 19 spot. This is another player who has been trending up like a T. Higgins over the past 3 or 4 weeks of time. Tyler Lockett and Russell Wilson, that is, have a very, very good chemistry together. They have a very good connection on the field, and that has shown true here since Russ has returned from his finger injury. He's got 3 weeks in a row of either having 96 or more receiving yards or a receiving touchdown, and again, that has resulted in some great production. His ceiling is fantastic. We've seen him, especially early on this year, have some really great booms. Right now, he's been the more productive receiver since Russ's return in the offense in favor of a DK Metcalf. We'll see if he's able to maintain these levels of production because at times his floor hasn't always been the most reliable asset in our fantasy leagues, but right now, things are golden with Tyler Lockett, and he's moving forward strong. DJ Moore at number 20 here. We're getting in and winding down the list for today's video. The one thing that is holding DJ Moore back from being in that wide receiver 1 category and conversation that he was earlier on this season is the quarterback play. Plain and simple. Cam Newton, PJ Walker, Sam Darnold. They all have some things you like about them. They've all certainly got some things that are glaring red flags and major areas that need improvement that we have all noticed during their times as the starter. DJ has been throughout this season the most productive wideout in this Panthers passing offense, and he is a very talented player in his own right. That is why I continue to have him on the list. I think he's got a great opportunity against Atlanta this week. You just got to get this guy a stable quarterback situation to be able to give us dependable fantasy output on a week-over-week basis. Again, he's super talented. He can stretch the field. He's a great route runner. He basically does it all, but the QBs have been what's holding him back because the targets he's getting simply are just not competent at times, and they're not catchable, which is really unfortunate to see such a quality player have that struggle be something totally unrelated and untied to him. Hunter Renfrow at the number 21 spot. This is where we're starting to see the breakout of a player who I think is very interesting. I love to see these slot receivers come out and really make an impact on the game. I've loved slot wideouts dating back to 2014. Randall Cobb was really the player that made me start to like this position group. And you don't really see all that many teams that run a true every down slot wide receiver. However, the emergence of Cooper Kupp this year is probably the best one we've seen in a long, long time. Hunter Renfrow is starting to have a breakout now where he is putting up uber dependable floor numbers on a week-to-week basis in the absence of some other weapons in this Las Vegas Raiders offense. He's been doing it all here. His route running is absolutely fantastic. He's not exactly the most explosive player in the world. However, he does really find his way around the zone defense and capitalizes on finding that open space and separation from defenders. In 4 of his last 5 games, 13.5 or more fantasy points. That's excellent production. In the entire season-long game log that he has here, he's got 8 contests with 8 or more targets, so you're getting some pretty dang good volume as well across the entirety of this season for Renfrow. So down the stretch, I expect it to be Renfrow and Waller once he comes back healthy. Those are the 1 and 2 passing options in this Raiders offense. Hunter Renfrow is someone I would absolutely love to have as a flex option in PPR leagues. Elijah Moore, another breakout wide receiver, or rookie wide receiver that is this season. I absolutely love this guy. I love his talent. I love his skill set. I love his explosiveness. There's everything to like here about Elijah Moore. Well, maybe except the height. I think he's only like 5'9", but that's besides the point. He's been getting the job done. He's a very nifty wideout. Again, very, very explosive. I think he's the best option in this Jets offense, and he has shown somewhat of an immune ability to produce in spite of the quarterback carousel that the Jets have been so far this season with Zach Wilson's injury, Mike White's injury. Rest in peace, Mike White. He didn't actually die. I should preface that. However, his short-lived stint of fantasy fame and NFL meme praise is now over. It was a fun ride. I loved Mike White while we had him. I hope he can get another stint somewhere, kind of like a Gardner Minshew, because he's a really fun player to watch and root for. But Zach Wilson, the number 2 pick, is back in the offense. And we've even seen Elijah Moore produce with Joe Flacco. So 3 quarterbacks Elijah Moore has produced with each one of them. His ceiling is great. The floor isn't always something that's been super dependable, but going back to week 7, Elijah Moore has started to put together a lot more consistency than he had in the start of the season. I really love, again, basically everything that this guy does. Corey Davis is now out for the season, so that increases the amount of dependability that this team has on Elijah Moore to be a productive asset for this offense. He's dealing with a bit of a quad injury right now. Keep an eye on that as he heads into this Sunday against the Saints. But if he's ready to go, I think he certainly warrants a lineup spot in that matchup. Terry McLaurin, how I wish he were higher on the list for today's video. However, consistency has been a major, major flaw for Terry McLaurin during the 2021 NFL season. He's got a great ceiling. We all know that. He's a super talented player. He has the capability to be a super productive asset for fantasy owners. However, again, he has had more bust performances than he's had booms. And at the end of the day, Washington right now is trending towards being a football team that's identity is smash mouth running the football with Antonio Gibson. And frankly, that's in the best interest of this team. Taylor Heineke is not someone you want to drop back with and throw 40 times a game. And while Terry is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, if you ask me, I think he's a top 10, 12 wideout or at least talent. It's not in their best interest to have Heineke throwing the ball and putting it in danger of being intercepted that many times. He's a gamer. You could win games with him. But this team is better off setting up play-action passes and playing smash-mouth football. So when he gets the opportunity, Terry McLaurin can absolutely feast. He does have a closing schedule that involves 5 NFC East opponents, so there are going to be some opportunities to have 2, maybe if we're lucky, 3 huge booms down the stretch of this season. If I was a betting man, which when it relates to fantasy football I am, I'd probably say it's more likely that it's only 2 and 3 misses for him. So he becomes a lower end wide receiver too because of that reliability issue. However, again, I love Terry McLaurin. I think if they could find a better quarterbacking option, he could absolutely be a fantastic player in fantasy and easily a top 12 wideout if they could, again, stabilize that quarterback position for a downfield passing game a little bit more. But that's more speaking towards 2022 in the future. We'll see if that ever even happens. Amari Cooper here at 24, the final player on today's list. It sounds like Cooper is a full go, ready for action, and is not going to have any limitations for this week's matchup. We saw that a little bit against the Saints last week in his return from the COVID list. That was obviously a game. He made one nice play in that contest. Other than that, it was really quiet, though. He's a boom-bust player. He's been that way the whole season. I'm excited to see. Hopefully he can finish this season off strong. The NFC East has a really weird closing schedule. So Dallas has 4 of their last 5 opponents are from the division. I just said Washington has 5 division games to close the year. I'm not sure who the schedule makers are or why they did things that way this year, but very odd way to close the season out. But like I said, now that he's not on a pitch count, now that Amari Cooper should be unleashed, if you will, for this Cowboys offense, I think he has a very, very high ceiling as he has all season long. However, he is second fiddle to Ceedee Lamb at this point. Let's be honest about that. Ceedee Lamb is the top dog in this Cowboys passing game. And at the end of the day, there are some reliability concerns, just like with Terry McLaurin, with Amari Cooper here. He doesn't have the safest floor. His ceiling is fantastic, but you're just hoping that you get that extra ceiling game to bounce your direction as opposed to that lackluster, poor floor performance. Alrighty, those were my top 24 rest of season wide receivers here in Week 14. Let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comment section below, as well as any questions you've got for me before the Sunday afternoon games kick off. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure to leave this video with a like and click that subscribe button if you're new around here so we can continue to grow the channel and grow the SFS brand throughout the finale of this 2021 NFL season. So thank you guys so much for all the support this year. Can't wait to finish this thing out strong. I'll see you next time. Peace out.